Today we have the rarest oyster in the Pearl oyster market, Sybil Stewart. Please introduce yourself to the people.
Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Sybil Stewart, and I am on a mission to empower as many women as possible to earn their first 100K or more without losing their mind or their life.
Definitely talk about it because, you know, I'm on a journey as well to reduce the codependency of large corporations and big governments. And to do that, you know, we got to empower the people, right? And that includes the women,
Yes,
so that we can have sustainable communities.
yes.
And I'm really appreciative that you do what you do. And that's why it's an amazing opportunity to have you on here today to talk about and diagnose, right? We got this one called The Future of Work.
Yes.
So, what I want to start off with, because, you know, we do etymology here as well as much as possible. So, I want to start off with what is work? Now, the interesting thing is when we go to etymology, it's kind of just what we think work is, what they told us is. It's really not nothing major to change.
Right.
However, when we go to the Black's Law Dictionary and look up work, it's any form of physical or mental excursions or exertion, excuse me, exertions on the excursion of work or both. So physical or mental exertions or both combined. Now here's the catch: for the attainment of some object other than recreation or amusement.
Yeah.
And people laugh at me when they, some people laugh at me when we say, hey, we got to give it a currency, right? But for the attainment of some other object than recreation or amusement, how does that make you feel? What do you think about that in response to seeing the Black's Law definition? Because work, you think you're getting something that you want, right? Something that you enjoy, but apparently it's some other object other than recreation or amusement. Tie that into your statement of trying to not kill ourselves when we do
I
it.
I long told people when I was in corporate, so I left corporate after 15 years. Okay, so this is not this is not just someone showing up. But I tell women all the time, I tell people all the time, the work was in the mental stamina that I had to keep up, to make sure that people liked me or fit in or didn't call me angry. I said doing the job was easy. I could perform all the tasks. The work was all up here. Of making sure I disarmed people when I walked into a room, making sure that I took on the responsibility of me, myself, and everybody else. And it drains you and it's tiring. And I tell women all the time, like, we don't have an infertility issue. We don't have a mental health issue. We have a workplace issue. There are so many women that I work with who, after leaving their corporate jobs, oh my gosh, you're pregnant. Oh my gosh, your hair is growing back. Oh my gosh, your weight's down or your weight's back where it's supposed to be. And I think we are relying so heavily on quick fix solutions rather than going to the origin. And the origin really is how the workplace is dehumanizing us and decentralizing how we get to show up in those places and spaces. And like I said, after fighting this fight for 15 years in corporate, trying to explain why all lives matter, I said, let me help you communicate your value, because until you are able to do that, until you're empowered to do that, nobody else is going to see it. They're going to keep on working you, and it's here.
I think that's great because you're telling people it's like you're taking their bliss away, you
Yeah.
know? And when we go back to that definition, right, and see the excursion factor or exertion factor, sometimes I like to mess up the words to make sure people listening, but the exertion factor, right?
Yep.
When we go back to that, See, the thing about exertion is a physical or perceived use of energy, right? So exertion, per my notes here, traditionally it says connotes a strenuous or costly effort
Yep.
resulting in generation of force, initiation of motion, or in the performance of work, which,
Yep.
you know, it concludes with saying it often relates to muscular activity and can be quantified empirically and by measurable metabolic response.
Yep.
So we're going to get into the diagnosis of the metabolic response portion in a moment. I wanted to parallel that first part of the definition. Kind of sounds like slavery, you know. When you read the book Power versus Force by David Hawkins, and there's no empowerment there. It says traditionally connotes a strenuous or costly effort. So what does it cost us?
Yep.
What is it costing us to go to these workplaces in the conditions that they're in? Like you were saying earlier, please expand on that. The resulting in a generation of force, initiation of motion, or in the performance of work. And what is it costing us at home and in our communities? High level overview.
Yeah, it's costing us our lives. And I take it to the research. I am not a medical practitioner, but I tell people I'm a researcher, I'm an educator. And there is research that is connecting the workplace to the levels of stroke that women experience before the age of 50, to the prevalence of hypertension in our communities of color, to the prevalence, like I said, of curable or preventable diseases, but for the fact that we are exerting in a way that is extremely unnatural. And I tell people all the time, like, if you're forcing it, then that's not where you're supposed to be. Like, there should be an ease, there should be a flow to your day.
So they got us like robots, right? But we not.
Intentionally.
Go ahead.
Intentionally, right? Like if we look at the history of the education system, it was designed for the Industrial Revolution, and people were not skilled enough to build and model and puzzle. And so we very intentionally, as a society, created educational institutions to solve for the problem. The problem was we needed railroad, more efficient transportation, etc. But now we have tried to force fit our current needs with a model that no longer works. Like we needed that model to build the things that we thought we needed. We don't need that model anymore. It's not sustainable.
I definitely agree with that. And I think there might be even a more sinister approach to it. And what if this was the silent warfare to actually be part of population control? But we'll get to that in a moment. As you mentioned, there's plenty of information and studies that show like the impact of long working hours by Micah Mika Kivimaki. The title was Long Working Hours and the Risk of Coronary Heart Disease and Stroke, a systematic review and meta-analysis of published and unpublished data for 603,838 individuals. Basically suggests a correlation between long working hours and increased risk of coronary heart disease and stroke. Number 2, under stress and health. Work stress and risk of cardiovascular mortality, prospective cohort study of industrial employees. Study explores the association between work-related stress and the risk of cardiovascular mortality. And third, lastly, mental health and work, titled Work-Related Stress and Depressive Disorders in an Italian General Population Study. The research investigates the relationship between work-related stress and depressive disorders in the general population. So just as to name a few, just in support of what you were saying earlier, what we have to accept is that you get stabbed with a knife, somebody else gets stabbed with a knife, not you, Sybil, but just generally speaking for people to think about this, right?
Yeah.
Based on your body type, that same knife is going to do a different amount of damage. Like if you get stabbed by a 2-inch blade and I got stabbed by a 2-inch blade, the effects on us is going to be a little bit different in drastic level, right?
Yep.
So 8-hour day, the one person may be like, nah, frog in the boiling pot. I got this 30 years and then they die, right? Somebody else, that 8-hour day may only take them 5 years.
Yep.
Talk about it for us, please.
Oh my gosh, you just said so much. Oh gosh. I think it's so key for us to recognize, like, this right here, I don't call work, but this is what I get to do every day. And it's about a perspective shift and how we've been trained to assume that the day has to be hard. And I think the other thing that we need to recognize is, for the first time, I don't know, in the last 50 years, our mortality rates are increasing and our longevity rates are decreasing. So all the work that we did to extend our lives, we are now seeing that it's not working, it's not effective, and our bodies are trying to go back to what its natural state is. And our natural state is not to sit sedentary either at a desk for 8 hours. And we try to cover it up with the remedies, right? Well, I'm gonna get a standing desk, or I'm gonna get the little thing, the pedal at the desk. That's, our bodies were designed for motion, for movement. We were and should be hunters and gatherers. We are supposed to be in nature, and we've just got such a disconnect from what it is we were created to do. And that is what is causing exertion. That is what's causing work. And there is a solution. But most people don't want to accept the fact that you don't have to do the corporate climb or the big box or the government, right? Like, it's a mindset shift and a perspective change.
So they feel the pain, they know something's wrong, but we don't know what to do about it. And then you come home and you abuse everybody around you, neighbors hating neighbors, toxic relationships at home. A lot of it's, the success of what was put into them at the workplace, right? So when we go back to that word, metabolic responses, okay?
Yep.
Or a term, I guess we could call it. We got, things like blood sugar levels, regular physical activities, adequate hydration, sleep,
Yep.
muscle mass, balanced nutrition. So when we're in a bad environment, all of those become affected and or unstable, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So talk about that for us.
We know the solution, but what we have is a fear that the solution is not going to work, because that's not what we're used to. We already know that these things are killing us, but human psychology, we want to eliminate pain as quickly as possible. Humans are inherently lazy. I don't know, nobody else wants to admit that. Humans are inherently lazy, but for the fact that when our survival instincts are kicking in, that's the only time our mind takes a proactive approach to showing up in the world. And so we want to tie quick solutions to things that feel familiar. I call it comfortable discomfort. If I can settle into a space of comfortable discomfort and pretend that self-care is getting my hair and nails done, rather than self-care, let me find a workplace that's going to honor me. Self-care, let me use my voice responsibly. Then we're going to keep the disconnect. We're going to continue to build upon unhealthy habits, and it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
One of the, I think you bring up a lot of great points there. One of the biggest, quickest, right, is the drugs. And I think either we all have or know someone that's smoked weed. It's not like crack, you know what I mean? But then there's people out there like doing crack, alcohol, fentanyl. Go ahead.
But the number one thing we're addicted to is sugar, and nobody talks about that.
Dietary and metabolic response.
That's it. What if we took sugar out of every single thing? There's a report, and it said something like 100 years ago, the average human only consumed 2 tablespoons of sugar a day. We do that in a cup of coffee.
Get it straight black.
Straight up, no chaser.
Little bit of lemon juice in there and some apple cider vinegar. That's all you
That's
need.
it.
That's all you
But
need.
yeah, we were not designed to take in so much processed foods, process anything. That's not what our bodies is a temple. Our temples are not designed for that.
So when you look at, I've seen somewhere in the past, and I've been searching for it periodically here and there, but sugar is actually on the Food and Drug Administration classified as a drug. And a lot of people don't realize that. So now you go back to the workplace and you feel like, oh, it's the frog in the boiling pot again. You go back to the workplace and you're like, no, this is okay. I'm just gonna go home and get some ice cream after a long week. I just want to have some ice cream. And then you got your spouse or significant other telling you, hey, look, we need to cut away from the ice cream. You're lactose intolerant. We need to get out and do some exercise. Now you hating them because they're trying to rip you away from your drug, your sugar, right?
Yep.
Or things that people don't even think about, like laughter.
Yep.
We wondering why we so want to go to comedy shows on the weekend and do all this stuff, because you don't realize that laughter, it hurts your muscles, whether you feel it or not. Then your brain says, oh, pain. It reduces a chemical in your body. It secretes a chemical that's equivalent to morphine. And you wondering why you like Tyler Perry movies, because you're a drug addict addicted to painkillers and you don't know it because you hate your workplace, but you feel like it's all good as long as you get to watch Tyler Perry on the weekend and eat ice cream.
Yep.
This is damaging, right?
It is. And I think the other thing people don't realize, again, this is just human psychology. Pick up a book, read the things, test me on this, fight me on it. But it said for every one negative interaction, the human mind requires 7 positive interactions. And I think about that as I reflect on my workplace experience and why microaggressions are so detrimental to the brain and the mind. I said, every time you microaggress somebody, you are lowering their IQ. Every time you microaggress somebody, they now need 7, and not broken up. They need 7 in a sequence to get over that one experience. Why? Because our mind is designed to remember pain so that we don't, have to do it again. But what happens in the workplace is you can't catch your breath, right? You microaggress me at 8 a.m. I don't have time to laugh for 2 hours before the next microaggression at 10 a.m. when I meet with this new group of people. And now my brain is proactively warning me that the pain is about to come, and those pain receptors are flaring up even prematurely. So, and on that off day where you want to treat me like a human, I'm still anticipating the thing, and my mind is still in fight or flight response. And that's the thing, right? Like now you got me in survival mode when I should be in problem solve mode or solution mode. It's a losing fight.
It's one of, like I just mentioned in the video I did a few hours ago, overnight almost. The quote says, "No weapon formed against us shall prosper." But for you to understand, for that to be true, you have to see it as a weapon first.
See it.
If you got a sword and you putting toothpaste on it and you go to brush your teeth, you're gonna cut yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So a great book, like you mentioned, and the research and stuff like you're talking about, is
The Body Keeps Score. I love that book.
excitement. So this is a great book, right?
It's a great
And
book.
I'm working my way through it, but high level overview, I appreciate some of the stuff in the very, near the beginning, where basically trauma is not only a physical experience, but also a physical one. Now think about what we learned about exertion, right? It's physical and mental, and trauma affects the entire body, right? So traumatic memories, like you're saying, are often stored in the body and can be triggered by various sensory experiences, kind of like what you were just saying.
Yeah.
So there's things like trauma-focused therapy, such as eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, right? EMDR, which I did a video on with Nicole Sublet a while back, and also neurofeedback. So what this is think about this. I want you to speak on this parallel, this simile, this possible thesauric events here, because with with those therapies, trauma focused therapies, they involve a form of controlled exposure
Yeah.
to traumatic memories in a safe and supportive environment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The idea of reliving traumatic experiences within a therapeutic context is not about re-traumatizing the individual, but rather providing a structured and supportive environment for the person to revisit and process the memories in a way that promotes healings.
Mhm.
So is the workplace a vicious cycle of trauma and then coping programs that are meant to dissipate the trauma just enough for us to get re-traumatized? Like a toxic relationship that pull you in, but then things are getting too great. They gotta push your ass away for a moment just to reel you back in, because or else you get bored because it's just too good to be true.
I tell people this is why burnout is a $1 billion business, right? This is why. And if I can say I have a solution to the thing that I started in the first place, well, now I get to create a new industry.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite quotes, and I just told one of my clients this the other day, because I've now started working one-on-one with women. I'm like, let's get you out of there. And the women that I'm working with are so dug in deep to some of these organizations, and they say foolishness like, "Ooh, I'm loyal to a flaw." And I said, "You be dead. You'll die being loyal to somebody who will let you go without a notice." But I digress. I digress. I forgot what I was about to say, but yes, that.
You had a client. She was stuck in there. She didn't want to go. She was addicted. She didn't realize she was on drugs. Go ahead.
She realized, and what I told her is, and she and I parted ways after this. I said, we're not dying because of the injury. We're dying because of the wrong remedy. I said, that is the wrong remedy. That's what's killing us. It's not the actual disease. It's we are looking for the wrong remedy and we're looking for quick solutions. And working on self is not a quick solution.
Working on the holistic mindset, women out there, man, because that's destroying homes. They come home, they go to work, and this is men and women. They go to work, they deal with this from they bosses, right? Quote unquote bosses. And it's okay when they do it. You know what I mean? It's a problem when I do it. Welcome, right? So, you know what I mean? Money bag, yo, shout out. But what I'm saying is, it's kind of like mind control, right? So, given your experience in promoting diversity and inclusion, how do you see the workplace stress, especially related to the issues like bullying and abusive supervision affecting the overall health and well-being of employees, particularly those from marginalized groups?
It's disturbing because, and I'm going to point the finger at us right now, we are culpable in our own treatment. Like, even when we have the option to leave, we stay. Even when we could do better, we don't. Even when we could advocate for somebody, we sit silent. And I think right now we're expecting the workplace to meet us, and we're not even meeting ourselves in an honest space to say, you know what? I'm responsible for a part of this. Am I responsible for the person who is yelling, cussing, and carrying on? No, but I have total control over my choices and my actions, which means I also have to suffer the consequences of silence. And once I realized I was responsible for some of the treatment that I got in the workplace, I said, I can't be silent anymore. And then I started saying all the things. And then I had to take the consequences of saying all the things, which is okay. And that's what brought us here today. This is a consequence, but I think we also think consequences are bad. I said, this was the most perfect outcome for the gifts that God gave me. There was no way for me to use these gifts inside the constraints of a corporate setting. It would not have worked. It would not have been sustainable. So I don't talk about DE&I the way other people talk about it anymore.
Always the perfect day. And, I want to let people know that you're a great resource for them to help. Your focus is women. And that's why I'm so amazed by your presence, because in the world, the way it is today, it's so refreshing to sit across from someone side by side next to someone who has the mirrored skin that I do, not that it's about that, but meaning that your mind hasn't been programmed in the way um that I find so many of us are, right? And that's the strength that we need to have in our communities to build and forge the future. Um, and it starts with the mind because it's weaponized against us. So let's go back to that, you know, the feelings that's going on at work. And because a lot of that is what's destroying the communities, regardless of, you know, like I said, skin color. It's really about that's why you hear me say United States citizen mindset,
Yep.
right? You versus American mindset. And you
Yep.
see, I got a lot of great people that come through here, and many of them don't look like we do, but we share the same destination.
Yep.
Even though some people that look like us are totally against what we stand for, and that's what it is. The new racism is gonna be on your thought process now. So, workplace bullying and PTSD, right?
Yes.
Layman,
Yes.
mobbing and psychological terror
Yes.
at the workplace, violence and victims. Okay. So the study highlights how persistent harassment and psychological terror at work can lead to adverse mental health outcomes, including development of post traumatic stress disorder.
And it takes 22 months to get over PTSD. And that is after removing the stimuli that caused, right? At least 22 months. And when I thought about that, I said, Lord, I don't have 22 months to get my mind back right. But you know what? I am now at month 14 of leaving corporate, and I am just now starting to feel like the me that I remember being before. Like that's just how far you know they talk about like being 1 degree off, and what happens eventually you totally on the other side of the world. It's literally 14 months of not being there, and I'm like, oh gosh, where was this person? They made sure she didn't exist. They made sure she didn't show up. And so much of the work I do is about seeing and hearing how you sound to you so you can sound the way you're supposed to the world, and reclaiming the voice that already exists, whatever that's supposed to be. Um, but we've been ingrained to fear that voice. We've been ingrained to fear being empowered because we have a power seeking world. And I'm like, when you're not seeking power, you know you are rooted empowered, it changes how you show up. It changes how people interact with you. It changes how you have conversations, not only with other people, but with yourself.
I think it's amazing when you consider what women go through and the support system around them. Carrying a baby for 9 months.
Yes.
Imagine what the reality is of waiting till you remove the problem and then having to carry yourself through a journey for 22 months.
Yep.
To rid yourself of the effects of PTSD. So now consider the support system around you. Is it helping you or hurting you? One, do we even know that this exists and this is what's going on? Does your significant other, male or female, talk to you about what's going on from a standpoint of knowing this, or do they just look at you like you some weak motherfucker that don't want to go get a job, or whatever, A, B, C, and D? Are we working to build a system to replace the slaughterhouse?
Yeah.
Because if corporate America is taking the same stance and they go through seminars and training saying this is how you get productivity, right? Consequences of abusive supervision, per the Academy of Management Journal, research dives into the repercussions of abusive supervision and on employee well-being. Yeah. And it was revealing the associations with various mental health issues among subordinates. So they know this exists, but they keep doing it anyway. Why? Because it's productive for them. Yep. It's destructive for us.
Yep.
They gain, we get a few cents on the dollar. They move up, we stuck. What are we doing to ourselves, Sybil?
Look, I already told people I am tired of building other people's pyramids. I said if somebody is going to have a temple, it's going to be my own. Not that I subscribe to self-made, but every time I hear a woman say she's the first or the only, I get scared for her, because that means you have no support, you have no system, you have no one around you to do all of the fill in the gaps that everybody else has. I was the first, I was the only 3 times.
Right.
And each time it got worse. And I felt more alone and isolated. And I said, but that's where they wanted me. They wanted me alone. They wanted me isolated and unable to defend myself in the terrain, right? On the mountain. Look, I was like, no, devil. And then it's the mind games. It's like, didn't you say? And I'm like, no, didn't he also say? Because see, that's how you battle this stuff. You battle this stuff with facts and scripture. Not to get super biblical here, but in the moments where people were challenging my being, like, not, oh, you had a typo, but challenging my being, I I got rooted and grounded really fast. And I said, nope, it is also stated. And you can't argue with that. You can argue all the other semantics and the word games that people try to play at work. You can't argue with who people know they are. But that's what they're attacking. They're not attacking your work. They're attacking your
Right. Man, I'm not religious and I'm not biblical. However, recently I've been compelled to go into scriptures and pull out the AK-47 of the Bible verses.
Here's the thing, though, and I tell people all the time, I am a Christian. I am spiritual. I believe that religion has a different connotation, right? I think that's where I differ. I said, you know what? If you take the Bible for nothing else, take it for good advice. Like, if you don't believe in God, Jesus, heaven, etc., take the Bible for some just really good, solid, be a good human advice.
I'm a fan of saying when I speak to people, I'm not necessarily talking to them most often. I'm talking to the Most High through them. So whether it's tarot cards, the Bible, you're riding by and see a billboard on a sign, the Most High will communicate with you through any and all means, because it's omnipresence that we're dealing with here. Yes. And one thing I was delivering recently, and I want to build this up to a question for you, is when you look at business, right? It's almost like a sin, because it's built to distract us from our focus on ourselves. Like you said, they're tearing you down, they're making you less than, and that goes into, I think it was Malachi. What was it? I don't know. Check out the video I did at like overnight. You know what I mean? It's a whole full breakdown there. It's called like the misconduct of tithes and sin, right? So, but now there was a James 4:6-10. I just happen to remember that, where it was at 10 was talking about, if you humble yourself before the Lord, he will lift you up. Yeah. And I wanted people to understand the concept that the word humble is not proud, right? And they got this whole campaign going on about being not proud. And if that would be great if proud was a bad thing. But in reality, the word proud means noble, excellent, and splendid. So what happens is we've demonized all of our proud nouns, person, places, or things in our community, and we're left humble when we're supposed to be proud, because we're supposed to be children of the Most High, little baby gods. But we've denounced that, and we become, instead of being American, we go run and accept United States citizenship. So here's the thing I want to say, because you bring up a great point about the infrastructure around you. And when we look at the organizational culture and mental health, you go to Schneider, B, Earhart, and MG, and Macy. I got notes, people. They know me. I got notes, okay? So Organizational Climate and Culture Annual Review of Psychology basically breaks it down and says, and the authors discuss how the prevailing culture within an organization can shape psychological well-being of its members. And I think this is what you attempted to do in corporate America. And I see the value of us attempting to do this, taking our intangibles and actually working with the community to make it that transformative state present in our own communities. Yeah. Tell us about as valuable as it is in the workplace, tell us about how we need to create that same organizational culture mentality at home, in our communities, and among the people around us, up
I
the
think
highway and down.
I, I I think we forget that's what we had. We had villages, we had tribes, we had communities. And in this, urban sprawl world, we forgot that that's what connects us. I grew up in a neighborhood where my teacher lived 3 doors down. My grandmother lived right around the corner. I could play outside safely, and there were 10 people watching over me. We don't have that anymore. We've shunned the community thinking it doesn't serve a purpose or a value anymore, when in fact, that is what fortified us. That is what restored us. That is where we got our healing when the world was against us. That's why Black people leaned into the church and that sort of thing, because that was the place where the community resided, provided, resourced us, fed us not only food, but spiritual, right? Like, that was the connection point across all generations. And we're losing all of those touch points one by one, thinking that, we got to do this thing alone and I'm in it by myself and I'm running this race. But, it's foolishness.
Mhm.
It's foolishness. And if we are not aware, we will create our own story of demise.
Mm.
Um, if we are not careful, we will be signing our own fate because we are feeding into all of the things that the world is telling us that we need, But again, going back to scripture is about renewing your mind, right? And it says, that's where we all need to be. We need to be transforming. We need to be renewing of our minds and not focusing on what the world is telling us. What do you know to be true about you? And most people don't want to have that hard conversation with themselves, because then they think, oh, now I got regret or grief or shame, thinking they can't change the trajectory.
Mm. Changing the trajectory. How do we get the trajectory? It
How do
was
we?
it was going back to what you said about, you said not being focused on what the world is telling us, but that's actually how we got the trajectory, right? Because if you want to control a population without firing a shot, you control the women. You
Yes.
get into their brains and they're
Yes.
going to assign the destination for the men, right? So I really appreciate your value, because you're a critical component of the transformation we need in the community. Because once our women understand how valuable they really are and that they have been weaponized against their own communities, now we can start to agree on a destination and work towards that. So as a woman's empowerment coach, you know, when you look at empowerment in the workplace intersecting with the findings on long-term exposure and work stress and its impact cardiovascular health, again, are we having the conversation to build the replacement for that? What specific strategies can be employed to empower women while promoting a healthier work environment? And also, what can men do to support that? The woman of the right mind. It's not coming home being abusive to their male, talking about they make six figures and fuck you and all this shit. I don't need you because they're programmed by Uncle Sam. Gonna give them a check if they kick them out the house. So not those women. I mean, we need to get them on the right mindset to that
Them too.
path. But what can men do to be supportive of the women that are actively working to help build the situation differently, build a replacement structure for us in the communities? How can we help them while while they're in that situation, to help promote a healthier work environment? And then how can we translate that to home and community?
Yeah, so two things. And these are things that I did in corporate. I want to be very clear that I did these things in corporate. Am I doing it even more now? Absolutely. I got nothing but time and space in my mouth. So, but in corporate, I say, can you find an advocate of one? Okay. And this is universal. When I was a leader, when I was a hiring manager, 80% of my hires were women. And not that I was like, oh, let me go find a woman. I said, let me find the best candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Let me find the person who is going to do the job I need them to do, and how fast can I get them revved up. And 80% of the people I hired were women. And that just goes to show, when you have an intentionality of being an advocate of one, because I didn't say I'm going to hire everybody. Okay. There were some unqualified people sliding through too. Not you. 80%. Now, if everybody had that level of intentionality of saying, you know what, I'm not going to do a broad sweep and wipe out the masses, but I'm going to advocate for one person in a way that nobody else can, based off of the posture and position of my role, imagine how quickly we could change the workforce. And the good news is, now those women are leaders and they now get to do the same thing. Right? This is an exponential problem that needs an exponential solution. That's the exponential solution. It's not enough to say, I'm the first
Mm-hmm.
or the only. It's to say, who's my second and my third. But so many women even get comfortable getting glad that they are the first and the only, that they forget somebody went before them. I love Maya Angelou's Our Grandmother's Poem. And this is the thing that made me realize I had to leave corporate.
Okay.
And in her poem, it said, I go as one, but I stand as 10,000. And I thought, how could I not be one of the 10,000 standing for another woman who decided to take a stand, to go do something better, to do something different? And then on the flip side, to know that even as I stand, there are 10,000 who went before me for such a time as this. It would be robbery. It would be a denial of every single thing that they went through, that I don't show up as the me that I am because I'm scared, or I'm afraid of what people might say, or all of these other things. So that's my speech to the women. And then for the men, same rules apply. How can you be an advocate of one? Quick story, I was in London last year when I left corporate, and I remember this guy, I was going to get coffee. I know that's another addiction too. I was going to get coffee, and I was the only person in line by themselves. So I know I was targeted. But
Mm.
what really frustrated me after I finished telling this man that he can go get thee behind me is, there was a group of businessmen, about 5 or 6, fully dressed in suits, etc., who watched that entire interaction between me and him, and they said nothing. Like, you mean to tell me you don't want your coffee either? You would rather sit and be silent and watch me be verbally abused over this 3 euro coffee than to say, excuse me, sir, get. Do you see what, like, it's in the small.
Right.
It's in the small that we could do so much for each other if we choose to. But see, we are accustomed to minding our own business. We're accustomed to saying less and turning our head because it's not our problem until it becomes personal. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I was targeted, and this was their opportunity to do that thing that they chose silence. So men are choosing silence too, but their silence is a lot more detrimental, especially when there is that dynamic at play. So that's the call to action for the men: is you right? Like, you up here exerting energy and power. That was your time to shine, and all 5, 6 of y'all said nothing.
You know, people like you and me, we take it personal when we enter corporate America workspace. We speak up, we demand change, but in a way that we justify it by showing the ROI, because that's how you're gonna get the success with it, right?
Yeah.
In that space. When in law, right? Not attorneys, it's all entertainment purposes. We're not doctors, but it's entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
In law, when you're being injured or when you've been injured, it's determined, it's accepted once you can identify the injury. You know what I mean? So if you fall off a bike, or if something damage hit you at work, break your arm, it's like, okay, it's broken. We now identify that it's injured. Yep. But see, the thing about this mental abuse and this physical inertia and trauma is that most people don't know they're being injured at the time until they die, right? It's too late there. People like me and you have the ability to see the actions as the threat, just like someone holding a gun or a knife approaching us. And I think that gives us the right to defend ourselves. Tying into what you were saying, the first and only, right? And then we got to look at the men in the suits that didn't do nothing. We got to look at it like attracts like.
Yep.
And that goes not just for holistic and people that are calling themselves conscious, but like attracts like for psychopaths and snakes too. So there's a quote that I hang on to that basically says, you know what, if you've identified one, multiple snakes, but at least hang on to just one of them, because they're going to help you identify the other snakes when they approach you, because like attracts like. They're gonna only be able to see themselves in them, and you're gonna be able to see that. And you don't gotta trip, just know that they're a snake. Use their snakeness to your advantage sometimes. So when we go into psychopathy and workplace dysfunction, right, with baby yacht, right, snakes in suits when psychopaths go to work, HarperCollins, it's the book about snakes in suits, delves into the presence of psychopathy, if I'm saying that right, in the workplace.
Psychopathy in the workplace, yeah.
Psychopathy. Tell me when I'm wrong. Make me better. So explore how individuals with psychopathic traits can manipulate and create dysfunction in organizational settings, so that whether it's a man or a woman that wants to be addicted to I'm the first and only, and they're snaking the fuck out of their coworkers, now we're creating dysfunction.
Yeah.
To the men that sat there and watched it happen, when they watched them snake you, we're supporting it happening. That leaves the workplace, and then we wonder why we got that in our communities, crab in the barrel mentality. Can you tell us something about that? Please help some healing there. Please. I'm trying to be the only one, and now you killing everybody else.
But secretly you enjoy being the only one because you are insecure. Secretly you enjoy being the only one because then you think you have, again, I go back to power versus being empowered. You're like, ooh, I'm in a power position. There's actually a TED Talk, and this woman talks about why she never promoted another woman. And in her TED Talk, she says, I never promoted another woman because I wanted them to go through what I went through to get where I was. And I was like, there are literally women who have gone through so much, and they're like, oh, is this what everybody got to go through? You too. And she talks about how she shifted her mindset, and now she's more inclusive, etc. She had her, aha moment. But there are literally women who think, I went through all this stuff, I'm gonna make your time equally as hard, because otherwise you don't deserve either. And I didn't do that. I went through my stuff, and I remember telling a lady who worked, I tell people they don't work for me, they work for the company. I just happen to be your supervisor. So I'm supposed to be supervising you, leading you. So one woman on my team, and I literally told her, I said, this is not the job you want. Here's what comes with it. Now you make a decision. I said, I will prepare you with the leadership, the expertise and experience, but I don't want this for you unless you sign up for it. But see, nobody's having those conversations because I already knew the lashes that I took to get to that position. And not that she wasn't strong enough, etc. It was none of that. It was, I need you to have your eyes wide open if this is the seat you say you want.
Right.
Here's what comes with this seat. Do you want that?
So it's amazing parallels. That statement that you made, I'm gonna make it your time equally as hard, is a big problem in our community. We finally get someone that gets ahead, they reach their point, and the first thing they want to do is pimp you out under the guise of, well, this is how I came up, you gotta go through it too. Right? Then what we do, we see the other side go and say, yo, man, I made it. Yo, You get a job, you get a job, you get a job. I got work for you. I got work for you. And then we call that, we get mad and say that's racism.
That's selling out.
Right. Or that's racism from the other party. They gave their friend the job and they didn't give me the work. Ain't that what we supposed to do? Look out for our own? Yep. Why we get mad at them? Because when they got the opportunity, they didn't sell out on their people.
Yep.
Right? They helped their people, their community, their neighbor. And like you said, it's like you want to put hey, bro, I want to give you this job, but I want to make sure, one, that you don't come here and blow the place up. And two, you can't get us both fired now. Come on now. But your first thought is, let me give bro or let me give this work.
Yep.
Just like on the block, right? All right. So there's no difference there. But what we do, we call it racism. We get mad because they thinking ahead. We thinking first and only. We don't want nobody else to shine. So now, reference Cairo, right? And Sigos, 2009, stress hormone psychological stress and regulation of metabolism. Let's go back to that metabolic, situations, right? Because that study provides insight into the psychological impact of stress hormones on the metabolic regulation. The review discusses how stress can influence various metabolic pathways, contributing to the understanding of the link between stress and metabolic responses, which I think ties directly into what you were just speaking about. I'm gonna make your time equally as hard. That makes you basically codependent on the murderer, the future murders of our own people, trying to get ahead because of your own, not you, but that person's own selfish addictions, whatever it may be. Can you break that down for us? And can you translate that for me? How would you say that?
Yeah, we abusing. I tell people we think we're abusing others, but we're abusing ourselves. Like, imagine how much energy it took for you to be unkind. That it's coming back on you. Yeah, I'm experiencing it in real time, but you get the residual of that bad energy. You get the residual of not knowing why you're not happy, even after you did this thing. You get the residual of not being able to heal because you are still trying to actively hurt. You can't do both. I can't be up here fighting you and then talk about, ooh, here you go, feel better. You can't do both. You only focus on one thing. And if you're focused on hurting me, that means you're hurting yourself as well. And I wish people would realize how heavy the weight of hurting other people really is. And that's not a burden. That's not a block of bricks I want to carry. I don't want to carry hurt for other people. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And then the second part of it, the metabolical part, I remember when I found out, and I tell people I'm very careful with my I ams. So I'm going to frame this very carefully. I was told that I had type 2 diabetes, but I talked to my physician, and I am so glad that together we decided we were not putting Sybil on medication. We were going to remove the things that was causing these metabolic reactions. And so now here I am 15 years later, and people say, ooh, you reverse diabetes. I said it was never supposed to exist in the first place. But I had to make a choice that was not the lifestyle, that was not the mindset, that was not the activity or inactivity, that was not the food. I refused to take in all of the things that created the perfect experience for diabetes to exist in this form. Mm-hmm. So, right, like, again, but that had to be a conscious decision to say, no, I don't subscribe to what this thing is that y'all tell me it is. And I'm going to do my own research. And then I started doing research, right? We don't want to read. And I looked at all of the ways they say people can heal themselves from diabetes, and they take it off the list. Boom, 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 boom. 15 years later, A1C 5.5, blood sugar, right? Like, you can't make up that math.
One of the intangibles that really caught my eye with you was your name. The quote is, the name doesn't become the man becomes the name. And phonetically, I know we make some adjustments, but those that are in etymology and gematria know that the vowels don't really, whatever. So when you look at the definition of Sybil, it was a woman supposed to possess powers and prophecy, a female soothsayer, right?
Yes.
And I think that's amazing in context because you are in the business of helping people look ahead. So, with a keen focus on women, and we're coming up on our time for today. Real recognize real. So, of course, I want to have you back to go into some more deep diving. Um, Artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, automation and manufacturing, telemedicine, health techs, autonomous vehicles, universal basic income. Looking ahead, what are your thoughts on reshaping the future of work to prioritize employee well being and avoid the risk associated with chronic stress?
Oh my gosh. Again, I think it starts with self. I have zero expectations for the workplace. I tell people the workplace is functioning as it was designed. It is not broken. It is functioning as it was intended to. We are the human element that the workplace doesn't account for, and it never will because it's static. It is inherently inhuman to be in the workplace. So it's not going to function any other way than as it was intended to. It's very much, you just said AI. AI is functioning as intended. It has the biases of the people who wrote it. So it is functioning exactly as they want it to. It is not broken. We have to own that part if we are going to change the entire landscape of how we define work, of what future of work looks like, um, and our place in how we not work but express our gifts into the world. Like I said at the top, I don't call what I do work. It is it is my honor. It is it because white people do not get the patent on privilege. It is my privilege to show up in places and spaces to advocate for everybody, to support and champion women, to have conversations like this where people can get even a little nugget of clarity that might change the trajectory of their life. This is
Mhm.
not work. This is the gift that was given to, yes, the prophet Sybil. And anything outside of this would be work because that means I'm not
Right.
functioning in my name, in my strengths, in my abilities and talents.
Applauds. And only because I recently just did this, it's fresh in my mind. But there was a passage, Malachi something, right? And it was talking about pouring out the abundance, right? And or there was two passages. Malachi was talking about pouring, and there was another one talking about the abundance, right? When you look at those two words, pouring means actually etymology, it's sourced from a word that meant to purify.
Yeah.
And then the abundance, most people think abundance is this great overflowing, but when you're connected with the omnipresence, it just means wholeness. Because if you can't go no more than infinity, right? So once you fill up infinity, once you become connected with omnipresence, you're whole as you can be. So pouring out the abundance is basically purifying your total existence.
Yeah.
We need to get off of the drug of the corporate America workplace. We need to build a replacement now. I think we just need to get rid of currency and make everything free. You know, how you gonna call it a free market, but you charging for everything? But we'll get to that in another conversation.
You do realize you're talking to an economics professor, right? Now we're getting into
Now we talking remedies.
now we're talking.
All right. So closing remarks.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a pleasure. And like I said, I think if you I tell people you see what you seek. If you really are seeking knowledge, if you are really seeking wholeness, if you really are seeking what you want, you will see it. The solution will be right there, but you have to seek. You have to ask, seek, and knock. And it literally will show up the minute you ask for it. I think you said that when we first met, you said, "Oh, I think I summoned you." And I was like, "Hello, then."
Right. It was amazing. Now, if they want to summon you, the link is, they may not be as uh, you know, telepathic, but if you want to, the links are right there for her LinkedIn and her email address. Go ahead and reach out to her, help the community, help you by helping you. I'm Pasha Paroh. We have Sybil Stewart. We'll be back. Sybil, say bye to the people.
Bye to the people.
Pasha Paroh, thank you for tuning. Enjoy.